Hi, my name is Daniel Delaurier. I teach at CIIS in the Transformative Study Department. And prior to that, I was the director of the East-West Psychology program. I am a psychologist by a professional background. And my area of expertise has been around consciousness studies, around dreams, subtle inner phenomenon that move through our consciousness. And I've been asked to talk about data and the nature of data and kind of open a conversation about what data could be used and where we can find it and how it can maybe relate to issues of mental health, issues of violence and gun violence and so on. The conversation that we had at a group, as a group prior to doing this video gave me the impression that there is kind of like a data set that exists out of which some maybe apps could be developed. And I brought the point that this data lives as an archival data. But when we're talking about human to human relationship or the human condition, data is going on all the time. The brain is, or data is being exchanged all the time. That's what I mean. The brain is you might say, very fine at picking differences between what happened in the past to what is happening right now and perhaps what will be happening in the future, extrapolating into the future. So what our brain does, and the reason why we get bored if nothing is going on, is because we are not being stimulated by the simple act of comparing what's happening right now with what's happening in the next moment and the next moment. And if this is always the same thing, we start to generate our own inner dream, our own data. Now, there's multiple types of data that are going on online, real time, all the time. So that when you're reading me, when you're looking at me, you may actually try to figure out what kind of emotion I may convey through my prosody, through my tonality, my voice, through my gesture. You can see if I'm calm, if I am agitated. If I start speaking fast, it may shows maybe that I'm nervous. If I'm not remembering a word, have a little lapsus. All of this is kind of data that you as a receiver might be picking up and projecting onto me an emotional state. So data in this case maybe is inner generated and then you picking up on it and you may act on it. Now what if there is an app in between you and I that can pick up my data as it's happening online in real time? That I don't need to have a person next to me, but something that can remind me of my state. So often the questions in mental health is that there's maybe a gap between one person feels like our internal generated sense of being and what we know and what we can do about that state. There's often kind of like a gap. Like we may feel very angry, not hungry, but angry, and then not realize that we're angry, and then pass into action in a very swift manner. I mean, we know that part of what needs to be done for people who have anger management issue is to kind of increase that gap and increase their capacity to be picking up their own data. Now, to which extent this online real-time data can be picked up by a device that gives a signal to the person like you would do in biofeedback is kind of a very interesting question. To which extent can my little intelligent phone become a biofeedback device that reminds me of my inner state? So that's one thing. Another thing that we might think of is that data also exists in aggregates, and I think that we can look at what's happening on Twitter feed, for instance, and aggregate a Twitter feed of a certain group or inside of a city, and you may get the pulse of kind of the happiness of the city just by looking at certain words that are peaking up or peaking down. Now, what we may ask is, well, where would this data go, and what would one do with this kind of aggregate data, so that maybe if there's a pocket of suffering inside the city, it may be picked up by the entire group, by the field, by what people tweet. And what could be done at that time? It may be interesting. It might be sending a theater group, that wants to do a little interaction and, brings up the morale of the people right there as a public event. I don't know. But or else this aggregate data can send in personalized message to the people inside this environment. So data can be personalized online, be aggregate, be brought as a group data, and then be brought back, so that the complexity of my sense of self feeding to the sense of self of the group, and the sense of self of the group feeding back to my own sense of self, can be accentuated or can be amplified by devices, by apps.